Dragon Age 2 was rated M for mature by the ESRB and contains blood and gore, language, sexual content, and violence. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello everyone, my name is Amaronith and I play games for the internet, and today we're playing Dragon Age 2. Reading of the Codex Entries from the first 11 episodes of this game, the LP, and I should not have let it go this long. It's been hours. Like, literally at least 3 hours just in the first two things, and that was just, like, the last episode was just the lore section, which is wild. Anyway, here we are, starting with characters. Anders. Magic is a tool, same as a bow or a sword. Would you cut off a child's hand to ensure he never wields one in anger? Anders has a rocky history with the Circle of Magi. Taken from his family when his talents first manifested, Anders was still a boy the first time he ran away from the Circle. Recaptured and returned dozens of times, Anders was still considered only a reckless scamp by the first enchanter Irving, who thought his easy temper and sense of humor made him no true threat. But during his final escape, Anders befriended the Warden Commander of Amaranthine and accepted an offer to become a Grey Warden. Life as a warden changed him, introducing him to the free Fade spirit called Justice, who slowly convinced Anders to turn his attention beyond his personal suffering. Infused with Justice's fervor, Anders offered to merge with the spirit in the name of mage freedom, starting them both down a dangerous path that turned the purity of justice into the unthinking hatred of vengeance. Aveline Vallen. If it's family, you protect. It doesn't matter who it is, blood or not. Aveline was born in Orlais, but she never knew the country. Her father, Benoit Dulac, was a chevalier who lost his patron to the game of intrigue. He fled to Fereldan while Aveline was an infant, and though his holdings were meager, he was determined she would have the life he had lost. She would become a knight, no matter what the cost. He eventually sold everything to sponsor Aveline into King Caelin's service. Knightly skills seemed bred into Aveline's bones, but she had her doubts, starting with her namesake, Sir Aveline. The first female knight of Orlais was orphaned, mocked for her looks, and then murdered when she dared stand with the men again in tournament. Her glory lies in tragedy, but the living Aveline doesn't revere sacrifice. A principled death is still a death. Her father was proud of her, but she would never be the knight he wished for. Aveline married Wesley Vallen while serving in the Fereldan army. They were kindred spirits and determined guardians. His death during the Blight scarred her, not just his loss, but that she failed to protect him. Aveline has healed in the past year, but she has yet to forgive herself. Accordingly, she is fiercely protective of the Hawkes and Garrett. They share a bond in loss, a connection she cherishes, but will not allowed to be repeated. Bartrand Tethras. Half of Kirkwall wants to be my best friend right now. The history of the noble House Tethras stretches back to the foundation of Orzammar. The memories say that 3 times a child of House Tethras took the office of Assembly Steward. They held appointments in the Shaperate of Memories and the Shaperate of Golems, but no longer. In the 2nd year of the reign of King Endrin Iduken, Lord Andvar Tethras was found guilty before the Assembly of willfully manipulating proving matches in favor of his house. For this affront to the ancestors, he and all his house were sentenced to exile on the surface. Andvar died a mere 5 years later, leaving behind his Lady Isla, 10-year-old Bartrand, and 2-year-old Varric. Exile, surface life, and the loss of her husband conspired against Lady Isla, who took to drink, leaving young Bartrand to manage what was left of House Tethras. By the time he was 15, Bartrand had doubled his family's fortune. The disgrace of House Tethras fueled his ambition, and his once noble title gave him an instant place among the Clanas, the old money elite of the Dwarven Merchants Guild. He used it to build an alliance and business ventures as if he were a member of the Orzammar Assembly. By the time Lady Isla died, Bartrand had made the Tethras family one of the guild's most influential. But wealth and power on the surface couldn't sate him. He began to court alliances with the wealthiest descendant family, branching into banking and mercenary companies. Guild members mutter that nothing will satisfy Bartrand but a complete reconstruction of House Tethras' estate in Orzammar, down to the rivers of lava, built in Kirkwall. Bethany Hawke. I was just hoping it would be different here in Kirkwall. We're not running away, we're coming home. Even growing up as an apostate has not dimmed Bethany's faith and sunny nature, though it has colored her view of the world. Bethany wishes above all else to be normal. She appreciates the trouble her family took to keep her out of the circle, but the running, hiding, and constant fear have taken their toll. Though she would never admit so to her mother, not after all she sacrificed to protect her, Bethany sometimes wonder whether she would be better off in the circle. At least there she would be with other mages, confident she would be serving the will of the Maker, and not defying a millennium of religious teachings. Still, her first loyalty is to her family. Despite her doubts, she gladly embraces her magic if it keeps them safe. She has a teasing rivalry with her twin Carver, and greatly respects Garrett. Carver Hawke. Carver grew up surrounded by magic he couldn't truly understand. He cared deeply for his family, but sometimes felt like the stupidest person in the room. Carver foundered in loathering, caught between the gifts of his apostate sister Bethany and the growing skill of his more focused sibling Garrett. But even as floundered, I guess is what they meant. But even as Carver groused about his lot, he remained dedicated to protecting those he loved. He didn't think twice about sacrificing himself to save his mother during the flight from the Darkspawn. Although Carver struggled to find his way in life, there is gratification in knowing his death had purpose. Knight Captain Cullen. Knight Captain Cullen was one of the few Templars who survived the incident at the Circle of Magi in Fereldan. The possessed blood mage Uldred took over the tower and in his madness filled it with summoned demons and abominations. Cullen was imprisoned, tortured, and forced to watch the slaughter of his fellow Templars. The ordeal shook him, and he emerged from it convinced that even Templars fail to see how dangerous mages can be. After Cullen returned to his duties, it became clear he would go to any lengths to enforce the Chantry's rule. His zeal troubled Knight Commander Gregor, who feared it unwise to let Cullen watch over the men and women he deemed responsible for his torment. Gregor sent Cullen to serve under Knight Commander Meredith in Kirkwall, and Meredith found Cullen's view of mages similar to her own. Of her company, only Cullen has seen mages potentially terrifying power firsthand, and she believed he could influence other Templars' views. Consequently, Cullen rose quickly through the ranks to become Knight Captain and Meredith's second in command. The Hero of Fereldan. The Hero of Fereldan once belonged to a clan of Dalish elves. An encounter with a tainted magical mirror corrupted the hero, and only the Grey Wardens had the cure. To save the hero's life, the clan gave her up to the Grey Warden Commander Duncan and the Order. The hero fought and killed the Archdemon and lived to tell the tale. With the Archdemon gone, the Darkspawn ranks broke, and the Horde was easily routed. After ending the Blight, the Hero of Fereldan took up the mantle of Warden Commander and began the task of rebuilding the Order in Fereldan. Fenris. Even those who live without chains are still bound, by fear, by tradition, by honor. Slaves dream of freedom, but I have found free men dream of it even more. Fenris was a slave, a bodyguard to Magister Denarius of the Tevinter Imperium, until his escape several years ago. He speaks little of his past, saying only that he most recently came to Kirkwall from Tantervale in the north. The markings on his skin are akin to rune crafting. Made of lyrium and ink, they suffuse Fenris's flesh with a power even he does not fully understand. The process of their creation was painful, and in unguarded moments Fenris attempts to control the agony that lingers still. Even so, the markings enhance his fighting skill and have made him a unique and formidable warrior. Flemeth. You are required to do nothing, least of all believe. Ages ago, legends say Ban Conabar took to wife a beautiful young woman who harbored a secret talent for magic, Flemeth of Highever. For a time they lived happily until the arrival of a young poet, Osen, who captured the lady's heart with his verse. They turned to the chastened tribes for help and hid from Conobar's wrath in the wilds, until word came to them that Conobar lay dying. His last wish was to see Flemeth's face one final time. The lovers returned, but it was a trap. Conobar killed Osen and imprisoned Flemeth in the highest tower of the castle. In grief and rage, Flemeth worked a spell to summon a spirit into this world to wreak vengeance upon her husband. Vengeance she received, but not as she planned. The spirit took possession of her, turning Flemeth into an abomination, a twisted, maddened creature. She slaughtered Conobar and all his men, and fled back into the wilds. For 100 years Flemeth plotted, stealing men from the chastened to sire monstrous daughters, horrific things that could kill a man with fear. These Kokari witches had led an army of chastened from the wilds to strike at the Olimari tribes. They were defeated by the hero Cormac, and all the witches burned, so they say, but even now the wilders whisper that Flemeth lives on in the marsh, that she and her daughters steal those men who come too near. Morgan's mother saved the last Grey Wardens from death at the top of the Tower of Vishal, but just who or what Flemeth truly is a mystery. Isabela. I'm Isabela, previously Captain Isabela. Sadly, without my ship, the title rings a bit hollow. Isabela is vague about her days as a sea captain, although it's obvious she was involved with piracy and smuggling. Shortly after the Blight ended, Isabela's ship was caught in a storm near the Wounded Coast. The vessel was destroyed, and Isabela feels lucky to have escaped with her life. Now she's stranded in the Free Marches, spending most of her time in the Hanged Man Tavern. Isabela also reveals that she was born in Ravane, but spent many years in Antiva. When asked about those years, she changes the subject. Merrill. The stories tell us that all Elven once had the gift, but like so many things it was lost. It's a keeper's job to remember, to restore what we can. As each generation passes, magic becomes more rare among the Dalish. As the gift dies out, talented children are moved between clans so that every keeper has a successor. And no clan is in danger of being left without guidance. Merrill was born to the Elorian clan, which wandered the hills of Navarra. She was the third child of the clan with the ancient gift born to her. When the next Arlathven gathering of the clans occurred, she was given to the Sabre clan to be first to keeper Marathari. Merrill was just 4 years old. She spent most of her life in Fereldan and the Kokari Wilds until her clan was driven north by the Blight. Garrett Hawke. The son of Malcolm Hawke and Leandra Amel, Garrett has lived in many places throughout Fereldan. His father and younger sister Bethany were apostate mages, thus the family was constantly on the move, avoiding Templar hunters. 10 years ago, the family settled in the village of Lothering, building a home on the outskirts and making a life where they wouldn't be forever on the run. Though Leandra worried constantly that the Templars would one day catch up with them, Malcolm kept his abilities secret and taught his daughter to do the same. He died 3 years ago, leaving Garrett responsible for the welfare of his mother and younger siblings. When the Blight began, Garrett and Carver enlisted in King Caelan's regiment. The horde spilling from the Kokari wilds meant their home would be quickly overrun if the Darkspawn were not defeated immediately. However, the Battle of Ostagar ended with the betrayal and death of King Caelan. Garrett and Carver barely escaped the chaos with their lives and returned to Lothering to get their mother and Bethany out, with only moments to spare. Sebastian Vael. In the face of danger, sometimes the bravest thing is to stand back and trust that the Maker will see justice done. Sebastian Vael is the only surviving son of the ruling family of Starkhaven, which was murdered in a violent coup d'etat. Sebastian cannot forget the irony that he still lives only because his family was so ashamed of his drinking and womanizing that they committed him to the Kirkwall Chantry against his will. After initially rejecting a priest's lifestyle, Sebastian was more surprised than anyone when he realized that his show of faith had turned real. Since then, his belief in the Maker and his plan for Thedas have been unshakable. Embracing his new role, Sebastian took vows of poverty and chastity to become a sworn brother of the Chantry, until word of his family's death forced him to take up worldly concerns once again. Grand Cleric Althenia, Sebastian's mentor and friend, hopes to convince him to walk away from the struggle for Starkhaven and return to the good works of the Chantry. Varric Tethras. I know everyone in this city worth knowing. Varric was born 3 years after his father's exile from Orzammar into the world of the Merchants' Guild. The ancestors never spoke, and the paragons were heroes in tall tales. The number of dances a Clana lady gave to a low-born ascendant boy were more pivotal than the reign of kings. While Bartrand ran the business and drove House Tethras ever higher up the social ladder, Varric looked after the family and their retainers. His mother, Lady Ilsa, suffered terribly from the trauma of her disgrace and exile, finding solace in liquor and smoke. It fell to her younger son to try and curb the worst of her drunken rages, to keep her from becoming a matter of public scandal, and to care for her when she fell ill from her excesses. Though he is famous throughout the Merchants' Guild for his stories, Varric speaks rarely of himself or his family. Most of Kirkwall knows him. Everyone has bought him a drink at least once, for the sake of his fictions rather than his family connections. Xenon The Antiquarian. You received the invitation? Then you are fortunate indeed. Xenon is no ordinary man, as you will discover for yourself when you enter the Black Emporium. The item you'll see resting in the chair is not one of the displays, rather it is the proprietor. It may speak to you. That's Xenon, using the mystical bauble that has allowed him to communicate since he lost the power of speech. The story tells that Xenon was a Kirkwall nobleman in the Age of Steel, almost 300 years ago. Obsessed with the pursuit of eternal life, he made a deal with a powerful witch. Some say it was the legendary Antivan Witch of the Weirs. And his wish was granted. He obtained eternal life, but not eternal youth. His body became decrepit, and he used his vast wealth to seek out ways to preserve it. Some were magical, many were dangerous, and almost all of them were unsuccessful. What remains is an immobile mass of twisted flesh, and I think Xenon's mind has slowly decayed along with his body. He hid away in the Undercity and has slowly amassed a collection that's sure to amaze. If he invited you, he thinks you have the coin and he needs to further his search for a cure. Just don't think of stealing anything. The golem is not for show. Although you're free to look around the shop, I wouldn't suggest staying over long. You might be present for one of the baths his servants give him hourly to keep his flesh from becoming completely desiccated. Trust me, you don't want that. From a letter of unknown origin, 848-49 blessed. Letters and notes. Emeric's notes. Emeric's notes are a messy collection of half-baked thoughts written out on scraps of paper. Only one seems to stand out. There's something about that low-town foundry where Marin's trail ended. I've got a strange feeling about it. Duty. To whom elects to participate in the charitable deed of assisting the Vael family of Starkhaven, His most worthy Highness, Prince Sebastian Vael, has provided instructions for anyone brave and noble enough to attempt the eradication of the rabble who dared attack his family. 3 groups of the Flint Company mercenaries have been sighted in the Kirkwall vicinity. One group makes camp not far from the elves of the Sundermount mountain range. The second has been seeking information on the docks after nightfall. The third is far from the main road off the Wounded Coast. They are believed to have a small campsite well past any known landmarks. Blech. A princely reward awaits whoever finds and defeats all these rogues. May the Maker guide you, Chanter Teletha. And, finally, a badly copied leaflet. Take back our streets! Fereldan refugees, Canary soldiers, who next? Deventer slavers, snatching children out of their beds? This ends now. Send a message that Kirkwallers will not accept this. We must band together to drive foreign waste from our doorstep. Reclaim the free marches for the marchers. If you care about our future, join the Friends of Kirkwall. Reclaim our city. Okay. And that is finally literally everything I've collected in 11 episodes. Ugh. So, I will see you next time. Whatever next time is. Until then, take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.